Sutra, Action Law Other. If we continue to do things as we always have, we will get what we always got. We must learn to change and seek new paths for ourselves. John Grinder, an American linguist, writer, and one of the founders of NLP, said, "If you do things as you always have, you will get what you always got." By acting as we always have, we cannot achieve different results, we cannot obtain something new. In the long run, it is always those who can change who succeed. Steve Jobs took decades to create one of his most famous devices, the iPad. As far back as 1988, Apple had formulated the idea for a tablet computer with a touch screen. By 1989, other manufacturers began introducing devices that aimed to realize similar technical principles. However, in the mid-2000s, when all the key technical solutions had been found, notably, the prototype of a multi-touch screen with inertial scrolling, Jobs had an epiphany: it would be better to create a touch smartphone. The tablet project was postponed for several years, and Apple focused on developing the iPhone. This strategic decision by Jobs, made contrary to the initial plans, allowed his company to make a stunning breakthrough into a new field. The fact was, by the early 2000s, smartphones were at the peak of their popularity, and it was clear that this market would become dominant. Yet with traditional technical solutions, Apple had no chance of surpassing strong competitors. Moreover, smartphones began to threaten the MP3 players produced by the company. In 2007, the first iPhone was introduced, a phone, player, and laptop in one package, which literally revolutionized the mobile phone market. Then, in January 2010, Steve Jobs presented the multifunctional iPad, ensuring another wave of popularity and enormous profits for his company. The inability to see new opportunities and solutions is often linked to an attachment to old habits. The very essence of the well-known saying "habit is second nature" has become so familiar that we sometimes overlook its reference to first nature. But if we think about it, the saying reminds us of the true nature of humans, that secondary or stereotypical layers, behavioral models or views, often prevent us from acting or thinking creatively, freely, and inspirited. Marcel Proust, a French writer, said, "Habit is second nature, it prevents us from knowing the first nature, which is characterized by cruelties and delights unknown to the second." German philosopher Immanuel Kant noted, "The more habits, the less freedom." French philosopher Blaise Pascal expressed a similar sentiment: "Habit is a second nature that destroys the first." The same is conveyed by the Chinese folk proverb on habits. "How can I know which path is best to follow in life?" asked the disciple of his teacher. The mentor asked the disciple to make a table. When the table was nearly finished, only nails needed to be hammered into the top. The teacher approached the disciple. The disciple hammered the nails with 3 precise strokes. However, one nail was difficult to drive in, and the disciple needed to spend a bit more time on it. The 4th stroke drove it too deep, causing the wood to crack. "Your hand always struck the hammer only 3 times, said the teacher. When any action becomes routine, it loses its meaning, and this can cause damage. Every action is your action, and there is only one secret: never let habit control your movements." Analyzing the biographies of various people, one can often observe similar life patterns, key events and actions that recur. This suggests the existence of a certain script that governs us. The place and time of action may change, but the algorithm remains unchanged. Figuratively, it can be illustrated by a country road. If a car gets stuck in a deep rut on a dirt road, it cannot turn off the path without outside help, it can only move forward. Similarly, a person, repeatedly performing habitual actions, gets the same result, just as always. This indicates a certain inertia and reluctance to change the established order. The principle of least action from physics is well known. It can be formulated as follows: when a change occurs in nature, the amount of action required for that change is the least possible. Similarly, in our lives, we often follow the path of least resistance, trying to exert minimal effort and use minimal knowledge to achieve a habitual result. The key word is habitual. If this is what we need, then deviating from the established algorithm is indeed not worth it. A well-tried life script guarantees that we will not make fatal errors. It is easier to give up great goals than to give up small habits. Alexander Cumore. Winning and losing ride on the same sled. What if we want to change something in our lives? Following the old script will lead to predictable results. It is also important to consider the inertia of a person's thinking. The old algorithm of actions will constantly pull us off our chosen path, and we will need to consciously exert extra effort to change it. Understanding how this principle works in our lives will allow us to freely choose different paths and clearly understand what results we will achieve. It is never too late to change. Reluctance to change leads to a reduction in one's opportunities. The renowned 18th-century Scottish philosopher David Hume argued that the concept of causality and the resulting belief in the regularity of events are merely consequences of the human way of perceiving the world. Observing recurring events, we ascribe regularity to them. The sun rises over the horizon every morning, but this does not mean it will always do so, nor does it mean it is the best or only way to mark the beginning of a new day. Hume succinctly formulated this regularity as, post hoc non est propter hoc, Latin, or after this does not mean because of this. According to Hume, the same applies to our inner lives. There is no substantial self, i.e., there is nothing that always characterizes ourself, but only a sequence of certain states of ourself, in which we become accustomed to specific repetitions and take them for granted. In reality, we are always open to new states of ourself, just as we are open to new perspectives on the connections between events happening around us. Both internal and external events can always be seen from a different perspective, in a different relationship. This ability can be developed, however, it alone does not guarantee life success. New experiences and knowledge must always be related to previous experiences and knowledge. The absence of objective regularity in the world and in ourself does not mean the absence of our particular firm connection with the world, other people, and our self-image. This connection is quite resilient and carries both healthy conservatism and the inertia of habit, which hinders the possibility of change. By protecting and preserving what is valuable to us, we always have the opportunity to change what we disagree with. Habit is something you no longer notice in yourself. Agatha Christie. You can't make up for a missed hour with a year. Happiness is not chased, it is pursued. The distinguished Roman philosopher and statesman Seneca wisely observed, to have no cause to be shaken or agitated, to know neither threat nor attack, to test the strength of one's spirit without disturbance in an unbroken idleness is not peace, but dead calm. Sometimes change is necessary simply because external circumstances and living conditions change. The person who feels the wind of change should build not a shield from the wind, but a windmill, goes the Eastern wisdom. The greatest thinker of antiquity, Aristotle, defined humans as social animals. Social, yet animals. The presence of biologically advantageous instinctual behaviors in animals is a very useful mechanism. However, instinct also has drawbacks, such as its template-based and limited nature. It does not consider the conditions in which the animal lives, making it act exactly as millions of its ancestors did, which can lead to the extinction of many individuals simply because they could not adapt to new conditions. If an animal acts as it always has, it will end up with the same results, i.e., a narrow range of adaptive reactions and, consequently, stagnation in development. Therefore, in the course of evolution, animals developed a new form of behavior learning ability, which arises from individual life and allows adaptation to changing environmental conditions. The unique property of our brain's plasticity enables humans to better adapt to specific environmental conditions. Happiness without wisdom is a leaky sum. Human happiness consists not at all in dying well, but in living well. Michel de Montaigne. It often happens that a person thinks happiness is far from them, while it has already come to them with silent steps. D. Boccaccio. Day after day, the same thing, home to work, work to home, we hear almost every day from a colleague. He is dissatisfied with everything, complaining about his low salary, boring work, and monotonous gray days at just over 30. If we suggest changing something in his life, finding another job, going on a trip, learning a foreign language, or doing anything new, he will come up with many excuses: no time, uninteresting, boring, and so on. Indeed, if one thinks this way, everything around will seem dull and monotonous. Reflecting on nature and the logic of evolution, a person should draw certain conclusions for their everyday activities. If one tends to act according to the same template, the brain gets used to it, and since changes in neural systems are quite stable, it forms a dynamic stereotype that determines future behavior. As a result, we get a stable system, but with a limited range of actions. On the other hand, the plasticity of our brain shows that it is never too late to change. Therefore, one should always try to find new and unconventional solutions to problems. Islam encourages believers to develop throughout their lives, to cultivate moral and ethical qualities, to constantly seek new knowledge, perform good deeds, and love the world, to be open to it and not fear change. Openness to the world and all that Allah has created requires inner fearlessness and acceptance. These are necessary conditions for Allah to provide new opportunities. How many prophets have been fought against by many armies, and they did not weaken due to what befell them in the way of Allah, nor did they yield or submit, and Allah loves the patient. Quran 3:146. For Muslims, spiritual development is a crucial value on their earthly journey. It elevates them above the cosmos and deepens their faith, Iman. The most effective way on this path is the knowledge of Allah and His incomparable qualities. By understanding the infinity of the Almighty and His attributes, a person realizes that there is not much time to waste on empty and monotonous routines, repeated scripts, and negative emotions. By opening up to knowledge and new experiences, a person will gain new opportunities to change their life. It is important to remember that knowledge and experience are permissible only within the boundaries allowed by Islam, halal, and are prohibited in the forbidden, haram. Where there are no changes and no need for change, the mind perishes. Herbert George Wells. Faster, higher, stronger. The Olympic motto of many outstanding athletes is increasingly seen not only on Olympic medals but is also finding followers among successful people who are used to moving forward and achieving their goals. Working on oneself is always hard work, involving overcoming one's own comfort and safety boundaries. It requires courage, fearlessness, and faith in one's path and dream. Only then can one surpass high standards and achieve set goals. Scholars of the Torah assert that the path of serving God involves continuous readiness to respond to changes in reality. The principle that the chance for a happy change accompanies a person until their last breath is also emphasized in the Gospel. According to the Gospel narrative, the first person to enter paradise was a hardened criminal who underwent an inner transformation in a short period of time, and Jesus said to him, "Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." Luke 23:43. It was not a sufferer mistakenly called a criminal, but one who had engaged in robbery and probably murder. Buddhism views life as a process of constant change, and the goal of the teaching is to take advantage of this circumstance. A calm attitude towards new horizons opened by the wheel of samsara is one of the fundamental values of Buddhism. The practice of meditation is intended to help a person overcome the natural fear of life's adversities and remain faithful to the path prescribed by the Four Noble Truths under new conditions. Fate leads those who are willing, and drags those who are unwilling. Happiness is always on the side of the brave. Experience shows that very few people reflect on what and why they do things, especially when everything is going well. When life flows like a calm river, such questions are rarely asked. And paradoxically, even when something goes wrong, people continue to tell themselves that it's normal and try to live with their conflicts, disappointments, and even a fair share of difficulties. Among the most common ways people avoid solving their problems, psychotherapist Martina Massacre identifies two main strategies. People try to rationalize what is happening, justifying the situation with a single correct decision or a lack of options. Such reactions often surprise us when seen in others, and we find them absurd until we do the same ourselves. People shift the blame for what is happening onto external factors, a spouse, children, parents, and so on. There are also more abstract culprits: fate, bad luck, the evil eye. People blame their character, too shy or, conversely, nervous, or even their external appearance, a nose that is too big or too small. What should be done in such cases? Many psychologists agree that the first step is to acknowledge personal responsibility for one's fate, rather than completely blaming external circumstances. If your partner is an absolutely despicable character, and this is objective, it only reflects your personal choice, not a lack of luck. Taking responsibility is the first and most crucial step towards well-being. For example, consider a series of romantic failures. Massacre suggests two approaches: to tell yourself that life hasn't worked out, that no one is suitable for you, and end your days in complete solitude, or to analyze the fact that you tend to enter relationships with people who have a lot in common, and all your relationships follow a similar pattern. You might notice that your behavior and reactions in these situations are also the same, leading to similar results. Realizing responsibility for what happens will allow you to feel in control of the situation. Indeed, Allah does not change what is with people until they change what is with themselves. And when Allah wills evil for a people, there is no way to avert it, they have no protector apart from Him. Quran 13:11. The Dalai Lama expressed a wise thought: practically no one likes change. The desire to change always meets resistance. The old holds us in place. It is important to find a way to detach from the past, then a new life will follow the law of balance. Real changes are never easy. People change only in circumstances where they have to change. Every person must change. Changes in the world depend on the changes in individuals. If you cling to the old and resist change, you are opposing the natural flow of life, and you are destined to suffer. Disintegration is a prerequisite for new growth. One cycle is impossible without the other. Eckhart Tolle, German writer and spiritual speaker, one of the most influential spiritual teachers of modern times. Indeed, the most natural thing in this world is change. The living cannot remain static. Everything is in a state of endless change. As stated in the famous Chinese Book of Changes, the only thing that never changes is the constant change of everything. It is never too late to change, writes Professor Claude Bert of the Marseille Academy of Psychoanalysis. An important condition for this is the willingness. People dream of changing their lives, getting rid of troubles, and reaching new heights. Of course, mere dreams are not enough, so one must act and take steps towards what is planned. If we are looking for a job, we should not be afraid to make a phone call to acquaintances or send out resumes. A good way to develop in the direction of change could be a new hobby, new friends, or a new job. For example, moving to a new place can not only change our habits and the usual flow of things but also bring positive innovations into our lives. Bert gives an example of a family passionate about decor. The couple moved to a new house where it was much more convenient for them to engage in their favorite hobby, which, in turn, became their new professional calling and made them much happier. If you want to have what you have never had, you must do what you have never done. Coco Chanel. The exceptional happiness of a person is to be engaged in their constant favorite activity. V. I Nemirovich Danchenko. Changing can be very difficult due to fears of the unknown and our inertia. But even very small changes can lead to significant changes in your life. Let's not refuse happiness in advance. Let's allow it to happen with us and take the first, even if small, step towards it.